This AI-generated podcast is for general information only and does not constitute financial or legal advice. Please consult a qualified professional. Welcome to the Luxembourg Fundcast. Produced by Bertrand Mariaux, a regulatory lawyer qualified as Avocat à la Cour in Luxembourg and Paris, this show brings you reliable insights on Luxembourg regulations sourced from curated official references. This episode is current as of 26 March 2026.
Thank you. It's brilliant to be here for this.
Yeah, glad to have you. So welcome everyone to today's deep dive. We are looking directly into CSSF newsletter number 302, which was published in March 2026. And our tone today is going to be highly clinical, very constructive.
Absolutely. It really needs to be.
Right, because we are exploring Luxembourg's coordinated shift into, digital supervisory execution. It's a fundamental change.
It is. March 2026 was essentially defined by this coordinated execution.
Yeah.
We are seeing liquidity management tools, passporting workflows, and AML or anti-money laundering data collection all being, integrated directly into the CSSF digital channels.
And to really visualize what this means for you listening, think about transitioning from reading an architect's blueprint, right, to actually laying the physical bricks.
That is a spot-on way to look at it, yeah.
Because we are moving away from just policy theory, reading the text and going straight into hard digital operational execution.
Precisely. It is about laying the bricks now.
Yeah.
So before we get bogged down in the granular details, let's establish the high-level takeaways, delivering that immediate practical value for you.
Yes, let's get into the must-knows. What is the first one?
So practical must-know number one is all about the LMT framework, the liquidity management tools.
Yeah.
This is driven by the law of 3 March 2026. The key here is that relevant funds are now formally required to select at least 2 liquidity management tools.
Right, at least 2.
Yes, at least 2. And notably, this selection cannot rely solely on a combination of swing pricing and dual pricing.
Wait, really? It cannot be just swing pricing and dual pricing?
Exactly. You cannot just use those two in tandem to satisfy the requirement.
Well, that's a huge point, isn't it? Because those are both essentially pricing mechanisms.
Yes, they adjust the cost of entering or exiting the fund, but they do not fundamentally stop a run on the fund if investors are panicking. The CSSF is making sure funds have structural tools like redemption gates or, anti-dilution levies alongside the pricing adjustments.
Ah, I see. So it's about having actual defensive mechanisms, not just cost allocation.
Right. Though there is a specific derogation to note here for money market funds.
Oh, okay. What does that look like?
Well, because money market funds operate with entirely different liquidity profiles, they have a specific derogation regarding this exact selection mandate. But for the vast majority, it's at least 2 functionally different tools.
Okay, that makes sense. So what is the second practical must-know from the newsletter?
The second one is about the European passport notifications for Luxembourg-domiciled IFMs, the investment fund managers. These notifications are entirely shifting to the eDesk portal. This isn't just a temporary test phase. It represents a permanent structural upgrade in how you digitally interact with the regulator.
A permanent shift. Okay, so everything routes through eDesk. And the third must know.
The third is regarding AML and CFT obligations. We always treat these as permanent structural pillars, not just passing trends.
Right, absolutely permanent.
Yeah, and the latest data collection exercise fixes the ultimate responsibility entirely on the RC or the RR.
The compliance officer or the person responsible for compliance.
Exactly. Even if the practical everyday task of, filling out the eDesk questionnaire is delegated to someone else, that ultimate responsibility stays with the RC or RR.
So looking at all this, how do these distinct updates, liquidity, passports, and AML data signal a broader unified strategy from the regulator rather than just isolated filings for you to manage?
That is the core question, really.
Right.
It signals that the CSSF has established a highly mature, unified digital perimeter. They are harmonizing their intake. They don't want fragmented emails or paper filings. They are saying, look, the ecosystem is huge, our supervision is digital, and your internal operations must match our operational precision.
It's a complete alignment of digital infrastructure. Well, to apply these takeaways, we first need to map out exactly who is affected.
Right.
And what the specific mandates actually are. So who is in the perimeter for these updates?
Well, let's break it down by the specific rules. What? For the LMT rules, the perimeter includes Luxembourg-domiciled UCIs and their management companies.
Okay.
It also covers Luxembourg-authorized AIFMs that manage open-ended AIS.
Right, open-ended specifically.
Yes, because closed-ended funds don't have the same daily or weekly redemption pressures, so the LMT tools we're discussing don't apply in the same way. And finally, it covers IFMs using European passport.
Okay, so that's the LMT side. What about the AML and CFT circular?
The AML circular covers a much wider scope. It adds investment firms, payment institutions, virtual asset service providers, crypto asset service providers, and central securities depositories to the list.
Wow, okay, so that is a much broader net.
Yes, because AML obligations touch every corner of the financial system.
Right. So we know the who. Let's look at the what. Newsletter 302 essentially highlights 3 pivotal communications from March 2026.
Yes, there's a very strict chronological sequence here. First, you have the 17 March update regarding the DOR register.
Right, the Digital Operational Resilience Act.
Spot on. Then, on 18 March, you have the communication directed at the investment fund industry, specifically concerning the liquidity management tools.
Okay, 17 March, then 18 March.
And then the 19 March communication on passport notification. So
Right.
It's a very busy 3 days of official communications.
Definitely. Which brings us to where and when. Where are these filings happening, and what are the initial activation dates you need to track?
The where is simple. It is exclusively the CSSF eDesk portal.
Yeah.
As for the when, the LMT framework officially takes effect from 16 April 2026.
16 April.
Right.
Got it. And the passporting.
The passport procedures are available via eDesk starting from 22 April 2026.
Okay, so mid to late April is looking very heavy. What about the AML data collection?
For AML, it depends on your group. The specific calibration sample group must file by 22 April 2026.
Same day as the passporting portal opened.
Exactly. And then all other entities captured by the circular have until 22 May 2026.
Okay, so April and May are critical execution windows.
Yeah.
Let's dig into the why and the how, particularly for the LMT changes. Why are we seeing the specific push now?
The why is entirely about legislative alignment. This is transposing Directive EU 224927.
The European directive.
Right, and it's being transposed into national law via Law of 3 March 2026. So the European framework is now local, enforceable Luxembourg law.
And how does a firm actually reflect this? I mean, you can't just send an email saying, we picked these 2 tools, right?
No, absolutely not. Institutions must reflect the 2 selected LMTs directly in their constitutional documents, their fund rules, and their prospectuses, or Article 21 disclosures.
Oh, wow. So you have to formally update the legal architecture of the fund.
Exactly. It requires formal drafting, board approvals, and proper governance.
Which perfectly transitions us to the next phase of our deep dive, the playbook. Because knowing the legal requirements, the dates and the texts, that is really only step 1.
It is the bare minimum, really.
Right. The real work for you is weaving these rules into your daily operating model. So let's talk about the first pillar of this playbook, governance alignment.
Well, governance alignment is critical because this isn't just a policy note you file away in a drawer. Selecting these LMTs requires fully documented activation and deactivation procedures.
Meaning you need to know exactly when and how to trigger a redemption gate, for example?
Precisely. You need a formal operational procedure that dictates who makes the call, how it is calculated, and how it is communicated.
So internally, your board of directors, your conducting officers, the legal department, and operations must all hold the exact same understanding simultaneously.
They have to. If legal writes a procedure that the operations software cannot actually execute in real time, the entire framework falls apart.
Right, which brings us to pillar 2, documentation.
Yeah, treating this as just a pure filing exercise completely misses the point. The substantive work, the heavy lifting, happens upstream.
Upstream, right, before you ever log into eDesk.
Exactly. You have to align the fund's legal architecture and offering documents before that filing takes place. The portal is just receiving the final result of your internal documentation process.
And pillar 3 is accountability. We touched on this with the AML questionnaire, but let's reiterate it because it's a structural pillar.
It is. The CSSF framework acknowledges that the actual compilation of the AML data might be delegated.
Right, you might have an analyst doing the data entry.
Yeah, or an external provider. But the strict chain of responsibility means the ultimate accountability at the precise moment of that eDesk submission remains permanently with the RC or RR.
I always compare this operational reality to a relay race.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, think about it. Legal drafts the documents, so they run the first leg. Operations builds the internal model, they run the second leg. And then compliance holds the baton at the finish line.
Right.
And if one runner is out of sync, if legal drafts something ops can't build, the final eDesk submission simply fails. the baton gets dropped.
That's a very accurate analogy. The compliance officer is holding the baton, but they rely entirely on the pacing and precision of the rest of the team.
Exactly. Now let's shift the lens outward to look at the broader context. Internal operational readiness is one thing, but it must be scaled to fit a vast and highly interconnected financial ecosystem here in Luxembourg.
The scale is quite staggering when you look at the precise figures. The CSSF newsletter actually provides the market pulse to illustrate exactly why minor execution gaps can become material risks.
Give us the scale. What are we looking at as of early 2026?
Well, as of 31 January 2026, there are 3,013 Luxembourg UCIs.
3,013 funds.
Yes, and they're holding a combined net asset value of 6,294.473 billion euros.
Over 6,000 billion euros. I mean, you simply cannot manage an ecosystem of that size with fragmented manual emails. It requires digital execution.
Exactly, and the infrastructure supporting those assets is immense. Late 2025 and early 2026 data shows the ecosystem is supported by 288 authorized AIFs.
288.
And over 52,000 employees working across the sector.
So the scale justifies the strictness of the digital rollouts. But with so many rules coming out, there's a crucial technical distinction found in the sources that we really need to highlight to prevent listener confusion.
Yes, this is very important for the compliance mapping. The newsletter records two specific Commission-delegated regulations, 2026-465 and 2026-466.
Right, and those two govern the LMTs, correct?
Spot on. They specifically govern the characteristics of the liquidity management tools. However, there is a third one mentioned, Delegated Regulation 226482.
And that one is different.
Completely different. That one addresses market structure and post-trade risk reduction.
Yeah.
It must absolutely not be folded into the LMT discussion.
Right. So if you are delegating reading materials to your internal teams, make sure they don't get those mixed up.
Exactness is essential for your compliance framework. Mixing those up would cause significant internal friction.
So navigating an ecosystem of this size requires a rigorous, officially scheduled timeline. There is no room for speculation. We only look at confirmed milestones. Let's look ahead.
Right, looking at the LMT deadlines first. The LMT selection module actually launched on the eDesk portal on 23 March 2026.
So the module is live.
It is live, but the critical milestone for you is 16 April 2026.
And what happens exactly on 16 April?
That is the hard deadline for the initial communication of your selected tools, and it's also the start date for the activation module itself within eDesk.
Okay, 16 April is circled in red. What about passporting and AML?
For passporting, eDesk availability opens on 22 April 2026. And it's worth noting, the CSSF is deploying an advanced API solution using S3 technology for this.
Right, an API solution. So it's direct machine-to-machine communication, highly efficient.
Yes, it represents a huge leap in structural digital efficiency. And for AML-CFT, as we mentioned, the calibration sample is due 22 April 2026, and the remaining entities are due 22 May 2026.
Okay, so April and May are intensely busy, but there's also the DORA timeline running in parallel, isn't there?
Yes, DORA is running right alongside this. Financial entities must submit their register of information via eDesk between 11 February and 31 March 2026.
Ah, okay, so that window closes right before the LMT window really hits its deadline. But wait, isn't there specific extension for certain branches?
There is. The CSSF noted a specific extension to 30 June 2026 for third country branches of credit institutions.
Okay, 30 June.
Yes, and that is handled on a best efforts basis, but it only applies to those specific third country branches. Everyone else is aiming for 31 March.
Okay, so that brings all the threads together. We've got the rules, the scope, the playbook, and the timeline. Let's talk about mastery.
I like that word, mastery.
Yeah, I want you to walk through what successful execution looks like for you, the listener, in a real-world scenario. Contrast a fragmented approach with a truly mastered approach.
Well, let's start with the fragmented approach. In that scenario, the real exposure isn't a lack of legal text. It's late alignment.
Late alignment, meaning teams aren't talking to each other.
Exactly. If a fund assumes a delegate will handle the eDesk update without a clean responsibility map, the digital filing will stall. You'll reach 15 April, realize operations hasn't built the model that legal drafted, and you fail the submission.
Right, because the portal won't accept a fragmented reality. So what does the mastered approach look like?
Mastery means orchestrating operations seamlessly. It means your fund documents are fully updated and board approved well in advance. It means the digital eDesk roles are actively granted to the right staff.
So no logging in on the day of the deadline and realizing you don't have the admin rights.
Exactly. And finally, it means the RC or RR is thoroughly positioned to validate the filing well ahead of those April deadlines. They have reviewed the data, they understand the LMT procedures, and they submit with total confidence.
So true mastery here is about treating the CSSF's digital portal not as an administrative hurdle, but as the final logical output of a well-oiled internal machine.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I completely agree. The portal just reflects your internal governance. Cross-departmental coordination is an absolute necessity now.
It really is. In a system of this scale, Luxembourg's coordinated digital framework reinforces its capacity to manage a large-scale fund ecosystem with operational precision.
It does. And I would just leave you with one final thought to explore on your own as you review your frameworks this week.
What's that?
When a digital filing deadline approaches in your firm, are you merely preparing data for a portal, or are you actively verifying that the underlying operational permissions, the documentation, and the personnel are perfectly aligned to support it? It's worth asking your teams tomorrow morning.
Follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to Bertrand Mariaux and Rigor Media on YouTube. Connect with Bertrand on LinkedIn at bertrandmariaux.com. All links in the show notes. This was the Luxembourg Fundcast.